We're so stoked that you guys are here. My name is Cobie. I'm working with you guys this summer, and I just love just being here on a weekly basis with you guys. It's been fun. It's awesome. I'm excited for the fun things ahead. Starting with bowling this week. I'm stoked for that. Hey, if you have not been here, we're in a series called Jonah, as you can probably tell. This is week 3, and we're looking at Jonah chapter 2. I'm excited to dive into this chapter this week. So if you have your Bible, or you have your phone, whatever that looks like for you, turn to Jonah chapter 2 right now, as we dive right in. We're going to read a chapter. Does anybody remember where we're at? Does anybody remember where we left off last week? I want to get a hand here. Does anybody remember? We're talking about Jonah. Oh, in the back. You got something for me? Where do we leave off?
So we left off. He went. So God told him to go to Nineveh and he went in the other direction to Tarshish.
That's right. All right. And then how did it finish at the very end? There was something kind of weird that happened. Do you remember?
Oh, a storm happened. And they had to throw him into the water, and then a big fish swallowed him.
A big fish swallowed him.
Thanks, Gabe.
Did somebody hear anything? I didn't hear anything. All right. Hey, so let's go ahead and read out of Jonah chapter 2. Thank you. I love it. That's good stuff. And if you can just follow along, I'm going to read the chapter real quick. So the last verse in chapter 1, verse 17, it says, "Now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of a fish 3 days and 3 nights." So that's what he's referring to. That's the very end of chapter 1. And now we go to chapter 2. Verse 1, it says, "From inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. He said, 'In my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead I called for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me into the depths, into the very heart of the seas, and the currents swirled around me. All your waves and breakers swept over me. I said, I have been banished from your sight, yet I will look again toward your holy temple. The engulfing waters threatened me. The deep surrounded me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. To the roots of the mountains I sank down. The earth beneath barred me in forever. But you, Lord my God, brought my life up from the pit. When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you, to your holy temple. Those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love for them. But I, with shouts of grateful praise, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will make good. I will say salvation comes from the Lord, and the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land." Will you pray with me this morning? God, I pray that you open our hearts this morning for what you have to say. God, teach us through this story of Jonah. Teach us what this story can teach us today. We love you, and in your name we pray. Amen. So I have a question this morning. I'm curious. Does anybody know the road Whitelock in Elk Grove? Is anybody familiar with this road? It goes all the way through Elk Grove. It passes by Franklin High School. It passes by CO. It goes from Franklin Boulevard all the way to the 99. So it literally goes all the way through Elk Grove. But there's a problem with this road. Okay, I really firmly believe there's a very big problem. There's a billion lights, so obviously people aren't going to drive that fast. And they still have a speed limit that is ridiculously low. So when you drive down Whitelock, you have to keep in mind at all time that the brake is on the left. You just have to think about that continually. Because if you think about putting your foot on the right, on the gas, you're screwed and you're going to get ticketed. So a little bit of a story. Last year, I came home from college and I was sent to CO, to Cosumnes Oaks, to pick up my brother. He needed a ride home. And so I was sent to go pick up Cameron from Cosumnes Oaks High School, and I drove down Whitelock. And what happened was I was at a light on Bruceville. If you're familiar with the area, I turned left onto Whitelock. So I'm heading down Whitelock towards Cosumnes Oaks. I'm going to pick up my brother, and it was a beautiful day out. The sun is out. My windows were down, and I was singing at the top of my lungs, at the top of my voice. I was literally singing louder than you would ever want me to sing. Okay? I was blasting worship music. No joke. I was blasting worship music. I was just worshiping God in that moment. And I forgot about something. I forgot about the fact that I was driving. I forgot about the fact that I was actually driving very fast. In fact, I looked in my rearview mirror, and the person that was next to me at the light was actually far back in the distance. The person that was next to me at that light before I turned on to Whitelock was in my dust. I had gone from that light down Whitelock faster than you should probably ever go down Whitelock. And sure enough, I saw a motorcycle cop behind me. This cop was weaving in and out. If you've seen that before, they're slowing down the traffic behind to say, this lunatic ahead of me needs a ticket, so all of you behind me slow down while I catch this fooligan. I was screwed. I was going way too fast, and I looked in my rearview mirror, saw them way behind me, saw the cop behind me, and then looked at my dial, and sure enough, I was way over the speed limit. I was screwed in this moment. So I pull over, and he has his lights on, the lights that you just never want to see. It just never really comes. Those lights just never come in a good time. Like, you never want to see those lights. So I pull over, and the cop comes up and asks me for all paperwork and all that. And so I give it to him, and he asks me, so where are you, going at such a fast rate on this day? Why are you in such a hurry that you're speeding down this road at an ungodly rate? Why are you doing what you're doing? And I tell him, well, officer, to be completely honest with you, I was going to pick up my brother from Cosumnes Oaks, and I had my worship music really loud, and I got carried away. I told him the truth. I'm not kidding you, this is actually what happened, and so I told the officer the truth. He asked me what I was doing. I said, well, officer, I was worshiping. And he kind of just giggled, he kind of laughed at me, and he took my paperwork and walked away, and I said, all right, I learned my lesson. I learned my lesson. You got to be careful. This was the first time that I had gotten pulled over by a cop, and I basically peed my pants in that moment. So here's the thing. I just want to explain something to you. If you go a certain amount over the speed limit, it's like big time in trouble. Like if you go over 20 over the speed limit, you're like really screwed. Let's just say I was really screwed at that moment. And so the cop comes back and he gives me back the paperwork and he says, have a good day. Just don't let this happen again.
Wow.
He let me off the hook that day. And he let me off the hook, and I don't know if my parents know this story, but I learned my lesson that day. I was going so far over the speed limit that I was going to get in big trouble. I was literally screwed. The officer, for some reason, chose to give me a break that day. But I want you to understand something. That moment changed the direction of my life. Like that moment was crazy. I went away. I was trembling. I was so nervous. I knew at that moment I was done. I was screwed. But from that moment on, I was forever more careful on how I drive down Whitelock. Other roads, Whitelock, I'm just kidding. But I learned in that moment that I got to be careful in how I drive. I got to be more careful in the way that I drive my car. This moment for me was a wake-up call. I got a break that day, but I learned from the situation. And I want to explain something to you guys this morning. Jonah also had a wake-up call. Jonah was supposed to die in those waters. Jonah was not supposed to live another day. Jonah was surely dead. Jonah was screwed. The men sent him overboard into these crazy waters in the middle of the ocean. God, if you can grasp this for a second, Jonah was done. Jonah was supposed to die, and surely he was convinced of this as well. Jonah was supposed to die in this moment. And what happens at the very end of chapter 1 is he was swallowed by a fish. Do not take this lightly. Do not overlook this verse and just go on to live your lives. Just think about this for a moment of what this actually meant for Jonah. Jonah was given a second chance. Jonah was given a wake-up call in this moment. Jonah did not take this lightly. Jonah realized what was actually happening in this moment. But the story is not about the change in location. The story is not about the tool that God used. I don't care if it was a fish. I don't care if it was a a dinosaur. I don't care if it was a whale. I don't care if it was a Loch Ness monster. I don't care what this animal was that saved Jonah's life. What I care about, what I think the point of this message is that Jonah had a change in heart. Jonah got rescued. He got swallowed by this fish. And Jonah had an inward change in heart. And as we read through chapter 2, we see Jonah's prayer. The point is not the fish. The point is not the change in location. The point is the change in heart. And Jonah's response to this wake-up call. Jonah's response to this getting thrown into the water, supposed to die, and got saved by a fish of all things. Jonah's response is a prayer. And we just read through that prayer. But I want you to think for a moment where this prayer is coming from. If we can pause for a second and think about Jonah's situation here. Jonah is literally in the belly of a fish. I want you to pause this morning. I know this is a fast-moving day. I know it's just another day of your life, and I know it just goes by. Every day goes by faster and faster. But I want you to pause just for a moment and think about what we're actually talking about right now. A fish swallowed Jonah. Have you ever been in a fish before? Have you ever been swallowed by a fish? I mean, I remember the day that I was swallowed by a fish. I was thrown into the water, and I got swallowed that day. And no, I never got swallowed by a fish. And I would like to talk to you if you got swallowed by a fish. The reality is this does not happen, guys. Like, this is not a normal event that happened. Jonah was swallowed by a fish. And then from this fish, Jonah had this prayer. This prayer is very, very significant because this prayer reveals the change of heart. And so I want you to think about for a second. We look at Jonah chapter 1 is what we looked at last week. Jonah chapter 1 was this call from God to go to Nineveh. He decides to run in the opposite direction, like you said. He went to Tarshish instead. And then he's thrown in the water, you have this prayer. And then as we move forward in the story, he goes to Nineveh. We're looking at Jonah chapter 3 and on in the following weeks. That's how Jonah actually goes to Nineveh. But why there's an entire chapter devoted to Jonah's prayer is because this is a turning point in the story. Jonah says, no, God, I know better than you. I'm going to go to Tarshish instead. Chapter 2 happens and there's a prayer. And then chapter 3, he's on his way to Nineveh. If you didn't read the story, you're like, okay, something major happened in chapter 2. What happened? He's going to Tarshish. Chapter 3, he's going to Nineveh. There's something that happens in chapter 2. And that's what I want you guys to grasp this morning. This prayer is significant. It's needed in this story because it reveals the change of heart that happens in Jonah's heart. In verse 9 it says, but I, with shouts of grateful praise, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will make good. I will say salvation comes from the Lord. Jonah gets it here. Jonah makes a proclamation that reveals the transformation that has happened in his heart. I guess the reality is, guys, we're all in need of a wake-up call sometimes. Jonah was in need of a wake-up call. Can we all agree on that? God gave him a direct call to go to Nineveh. He was chosen specifically to be the person sent by God to go and deliver a message to Nineveh. And he said, no, God, I know better. I don't want to do that. I'm going to be selfish and go my own way. So God sends a wake-up call to Jonah that day. And I have a feeling that we're all in need of a wake-up call sometimes. Sometimes we're all in need of a wake-up call. Have you ever done something wrong? Have you done something wrong and got a consequence that hurt? You get put on time out, you get spanked, you get a hard talking to. I don't know what that might be for you, but the consequence that you get wakes you up a little bit. This wake-up call kind of teaches you and says, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to do that. In the same way, I was driving way too fast that day. I got a wake-up call from the cop. I got pulled over, and he says, don't let that happen again. And those words are forever in my mind. I'm not going to do that again because I know I probably won't get another break. I had a wake-up call that day. Jonah had a wake-up call. I'm asking you, have you ever had a wake-up call? Have you ever had a consequence that taught you something? That you're going one direction, and then you have a consequence, and then you start going in the other direction. Maybe you're lying, or you're stealing, or you're cheating. Maybe it's some of these things. You get caught, or you almost get caught. I don't know what that will look like, but maybe you got caught or almost caught, and it's a wake-up call in your mind saying, like, maybe I shouldn't do that again, and then you start going in the other direction. You stop lying, you stop cheating, you stop stealing. Have you ever had a wake-up call? Because I have a feeling that our lives get crazy, and sometimes we forget about these wake-up calls. Sometimes I set out on the road in the morning, forgetting about that story. Forgetting about that time that I got pulled over. I start driving too fast, and then my mind starts to think again, Cobie, you can't do this. There's speed limits there for a reason. They're for my safety. They're for the safety of others. Those speed limits are there for a reason, and I'm supposed to follow that. And then there's the obvious, well, if I don't follow, I could also get pulled over and get a ticket as well. There's consequences here for my actions. But I think sometimes our life gets a little crazy. Sometimes our life gets crazy and we forget about these things. Forget about the things that we've learned. Sometimes I forget who I am. Sometimes I forget my call. Sometimes I forget all that God has done for me. Sometimes, if I'm real honest with you guys, I forget some of these things. Sometimes I forget some of the most important things in my life. And I guess what I want you guys to understand this morning is that we need to be careful not to forget. It's easy to get a crazy life, get busy and get busy and get busy. But I don't want to get so busy that we forget about the important things. My question for you this morning is, do you need a reset? Jonah had a reset in the belly of the whale, in the belly of the fish. Jonah had a reset. He had a change of heart. He realized in that moment everything that he was doing. He had been running in the wrong direction. Last week I asked you the question, what direction are you running? Are you running towards God, or are you running away from God? And I guess this morning I'm asking the question, do you need to hit the reset? Are you forgetting about the most important things in your life? Because I guess why I care about this is because Jonah had a terrible consequence. He was swallowed, but he was given a second chance. I don't want you to have to go through the consequences of your actions. You ever been told that by someone? You ever been told that by maybe a parent or someone that's older and saying like, I know better than you. Like, I've lived more life than you. Like, my dad said this before. He said, like, Cobie, trust me. I know this. You might not understand this right now, but I know this. I guess I want you guys to understand this morning that we have consequences for our actions. And sometimes life gets crazy, and sometimes we forget about what's most important. But I want to give you guys a space this morning in your groups to talk about where you're really at. I want to give you a space this morning to talk about where your heart's at right now. Do you need a reset? Do you need a wake-up call? Do you need someone to ask you the hard questions right now? Where are you at? Because again, guys, I had a wake-up call. And it was a close one. Jonah had a wake-up call. He was given a second chance. And I'm wondering this morning, can this be your wake-up call? Can you hit the reset this morning? Is this what you really, really need right now? Will you pray with me? God, we look at the story of Jonah, and Jonah was given a wake-up call. Jonah was literally swallowed by a fish. He was taken to the depths of the ocean. And Jonah in that moment realized what he had done wrong. So God, in our time this morning, in our small groups, I just want to pray that we can be vulnerable with each other. We can be honest with each other about where we're at. That we can think about all that we have to be thankful for.